I know that I want one of these rings to be on the outside of this bracket, so I had to put it on there first, and then I go ahead and slide the rod through. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Rich. Getting ready to do some decor work. My wife finally wanted to put some curtains up in our bedroom. So today we're going to be installing some curtain rods and some curtains, and so I'm going to kind of walk you through how to go ahead and go about installing them. We're going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to show you what my wife has chosen for curtains and how to go about measuring it out for the bedroom. So here are a few items that you're going to need to get this installed. Obviously, you're going to have the hardware from your curtain rods and your mounting items that you'll use to mount the curtains. Some curtain rods obviously, or some curtains actually have a hole that goes through them, so you actually run the curtain rod through the actual curtains themselves. My particular ones, you need some sort of an attachment, and so that's what we have these rings for, and these clips. You'll need a hammer, dependent upon whether you're going to be putting the mounting screws into drywall or if you actually hit wood, you'll just need to screw it into the wood. But you're going to need a drill to drill into the drywall or the wood just to be sure that you're not doing any damage to the screws and splitting the wood. So it's good to use a pilot hole. Drill bits and then a tape measure to measure what we need out. So this is the curtain rod that my wife has chosen. It is obviously the proper size for the windows that we're going to be installing. You just want to make sure that when you purchase them, that you get something that that will extend just a little bit wider than the existing window, so that it has a proper distance for the curtain itself. You don't want one that's exactly the same size as the curtain. You want something that you can extend out and will be just a little bit wider. But it really depends on your preference. Some people like to have the finial, is what this end is called, the finial, to be in line with the frame. Some people don't. Some people like it much wider, but that's all on your preference. Just make sure you're getting the appropriate length rod when you make your purchase. So here's the curtains that my wife actually chose. I've laid them out on a length so that I could put a tape measure to them. The packaging says that they're 84 inches long, and it's accurate, but it's a good thing to measure it just to be sure. I know I want to have the curtain actually be about an inch off of the floor. Some people like to have the curtains touch the floor, or sometimes they drag on the floor. I prefer not to do that just because I like it to hang a little bit, and then I like to keep it about an inch above the floor so that whenever you're running the vacuum cleaner, you don't end up taking a chance of having the vacuum cleaner suck up your curtains. So I like to have it just above the floor. It gives you the same effect, and it's fine. So that's my personal preference. Obviously, you'll have to decide how you want to do it, but I'm basing all my measurements off of having an extra inch above the floor itself. So I need to understand the distance of these rings as they hang on here, because that's going to add some distance before you have to add this to the length of the curtain itself, so that you can understand how high up you need to make this rod so that it doesn't drag on the floor. So I know that essentially this distance, when it's stretched out, is approximately 2 3/4. So you would have to add 2 3/4 to the length of the curtain. So the curtain is 84, and then I'd have to add 2 3/4 to that, so it's going to make it 86 3/4. So that's the length if it was actually touching the floor itself. But because I want to go up, it's going to be 87 3/4 instead of 86 3/4. So that's going to increase it by an inch off the floor, and that should be sufficient. The other thing you need to take into consideration is where this is going to be. It's the distance from the bottom of this hook. So the rod itself is not going to be right at the top of this part is going to be at 87 3/4, not the center of it. So when you mount this, because of the way it's mounted, if you measured 87 3/4 to the top of this piece, it's not going to give you what you want because it's actually going to be higher because it's the center of this hole. So if you're saying 87 3/4 is going to be up here, you need to reduce that by whatever half of this circle is, which it's an inch rod, so I would imagine it's just a 1/2 inch. Yeah, so it's an inch rod, so you have to reduce it by a 1/2 inch. So rather than being 87 3/4, it's going to be 87 1/4 overall to be the top of this mark, so that when you are making your measurements, you can make a measurement at 87 1/4, put the top of this right there, and then make your marks for drilling the hole. That's how you determine how tall it needs to be, or how high off the floor you need to have it, so that you can make the proper marks and that you're not making multiple drill holes in your walls. So you have to do a little bit of math, a little bit of measuring to determine how it's done. And it really all depends on the curtain itself. And I should also measure out the distance of this finial, or the length of this finial, so that I know how far in I need to make this bracket. So this is 2.5. So I know that the bracket has to be in at least 2.5, but probably a little bit more, honestly. So I'm going to be doing the measurements for this window first, and the reason why I'm doing that is because of the distance from the window trim to the adjacent wall. If I didn't have this adjacent wall here, I could measure out the way I wanted to, because I would like for the actual finial ball to be further away from the actual trim itself, and you know, stick out a little bit more. But because this gap is so small, I'm going to have to mount it probably a little closer in than I want, and whatever I do on this window, I'm going to have to repeat the process for the other windows so that they all match. It's a particular situation because of this window itself, but I wanted to show that in case somebody ran into the same kind of scenario. Okay, so now that I know that the length of the curtain and the rod and all the hardware together is going to be 87 1/4. I just need to make a mark at 87 1/4. Is going to be right there. Okay, so I know I'm going to want to put the top of the bracket right there. But I still need to find out the distance in and out of where I need to put the bracket. So the finial is 2.5 inches in. So I'm going to make the bracket start at about 1 inch in. So I'm going to put that one right here. That way the bracket will be here, and I can still put a ring right here at the edge, right at the end of the finial, because The only reason I'm bringing it in so far, well, it's not that far, but I want to have enough gap in between here, some gap, so that I can put one of the rings right here so that it hangs the edge of it right here. Because I want to try to cover this as much as possible. Even though that finial goes in a ½ inch. That finial goes in a ½ inch. So I'm not really going to be able to cover this portion of it. I'll fudge it a little bit just to where I clip the end of the curtain. It won't be right on the edge, so that I can cover this up as much as possible. But that's just because of the way I have the gap here and the way the finial is. So the distance in is 2.5, and I know the trim is at 2, so trim, the distance from the start of this bracket where I've marked it is 1.5 inches in from the trim. So I know on this side I have to be 1.5 inches in. So it's going to be 1.5 inches in. And then I know that the height of it is going to be, because this is the 87.25 mark, that's 4.5 inches up. So if I go 4.5 inches up right here on the edge, and so I'm going right on the edge so that I know when I go straight up, that's about level, and then I can go 1.5 inches in for the distance of the bracket. So that's where I want my bracket to start. So the bracket will be right in here. And then I'll make my holes. You want it right there. And I'll do the other side. The bracket starts right there. And then we can make our marks. Alright, so I've got my marks, and I'm going to do, this is an 1/8 inch pilot hole. I don't know if I'm going to run into wood or if I'm just going to go straight through it from the drywall, but I'm going to do the smaller hole first in case it's wood. That seemed to be wood. So I would imagine this is going to be wood too. But I'm going to go ahead and put my screw in first, and then I'll drill the hole for that one after it's locked into place. There you go. That's perfect. So I know that I want one of these rings to be on the outside of this bracket, so I had to put it on there first, and then I go ahead and slide the rod through. And now I can put, there's 12 per each side of curtain, so I'm going to put 10 of them on the inside. All right, so there's the finished curtain. I was able to steam it, and it looks pretty good. Now it's just a matter of repeating the process here and there. Um, so I know the measurements that I need, and so it'll make it a whole lot faster from here on out. So pretty simple process, not really too difficult of a job to do. Just making sure that you take your measurements and make sure that your distances for where your bracketry needs to be based on how far out you want the finials to be when you're doing it, and then how high off the ground that you want to have the curtains if you want them off the ground. But aside from that, pretty simple project. Hopefully these instructions are helpful to you, and if you're getting ready to tackle some curtains, that this will be helpful. If you have any questions about what I did here or your particular situation, please make some comments below. I'm happy to answer your questions, and if you like this video, please like or subscribe to my channel. Thanks.